Okay, we are going to install our flexible auger system into a fill system. Your auger will come on a coil. It is at your discretion, depending on the length of your auger, if you want to work off of that coil, or if it's a short run, if you want to uncoil it and feed it in with one person is doable. If you're going to work off of the coil, it's pretty much important to have two people, one person to uncoil it while the other person feeds it into the system. Very important to do smooth, even strokes when you're pushing in the auger so you don't kink or bend the system. At this point we will start feeding the auger in. Okay, so we have our piece of auger. It's pre-cut close to the correct length. We've shoved it in. I can feel it tapping in up on the drive end. We will go inside the barn now and connect the auger to the drive. Okay, we are now inside at the drive unit. Obviously, before we started any of this, make sure the power is disconnected to the unit before you start any of this process. We've got our augers started in here. I'm going to turn the motor to thread that onto the system.
Okay. 3, 2, go.
Here on the back side of the motor, you can see the shaft sticking out. It has got, it's flattened on two sides, so you can put a 1/2-inch wrench on there to be able to drive that around to do this easily. Okay, you want to make sure when you're threading that on that you get the end of the flighting all the way to the stop here, and then we'll tighten down the 2 set screws. Okay, now that we've reattached our safety door, we will go out to the bearing end and show you how to do the stretch and apply the anchor to the end of the auger.
2.
Okay, we are back out at the feed bin where we shoved our auger in. We're going to pull and make sure that all of our slack is out of the system. You need a way to mark the auger to know where the slack end is. I prefer to use a vice grips. You can use whatever works best for you. Just make sure it is a clear and distinct mark so you can find it back. So I am hooking my vice grips on where my slack point is. And then I am going to pull some slack out of the bin so I've got a little room to work. Okay, now that I've pulled the slack out of the bin, I've got one vice grips marking my slack point. I've got another vice grips holding some slack out of the bin. I've got a 9/16 wrench for my clamp assembly. I've got my anchor and bearing and a wrench to tighten that. I use a cutoff grinder to cut my auger, as well as a tape measure to measure how much stretch I need to put on it. This auger is 50 feet long. We recommend 2 inches of slack per 50 feet. So I am going to measure from my slack point up 2 inches, which is basically one twist around. I'm going to take my cutoff grinder and make that cut.
2.
Okay, now that we've got our auger cut to length, we've still got our clamp on up here. We started threading our anchor assembly onto the flighting. You're going to twist that on to the stop, and we're going to tighten the set bolt down right here. So that is tight now. It is recommended to not use your fingers. Hook your spare vice grips at this point onto the end of the bearing collar for safety purposes. Now I'm going to pull some slack back out, remove our vice grips, and let it pull itself back in. You can remove your vice grips, put your clamp back on, tighten that up, and then you get your rubber boot on the end to keep the dust and dirt out, and you are complete.